Everyone keeps talking about Robert Pattinson joining the DCU as the new Batman. And let me just say, I love Robert Pattinson as Batman. I love the movie The Batman by Matt Reeves. But I have to say, him joining the DCU has to be the worst idea possible. Now, let me explain why this is the Batman we do not need or deserve in the DCU by listing four major complaints or critiques I have on this idea. The last of which will convince you if you already aren't convinced already. But before we get started, let me just say, hey, it's Keith here. If you already aren't familiar with the channel, then on this channel, I like to review, react, and give my opinion on a lot of things Marvel, DC, anime related. And in this video, like you can already see, I'm going to be discussing why Robert Pattinson's Batman joining the DCU is a terrible idea. Starting off with the tonal shift that this Batman will have with the current DCU. Now, to be fair, they already have said the new DC universe will have a lot of different tones and themes based on the characters that are going to be introduced in these films, which I think is a great idea. There shouldn't be one central theme. I mean, this is comics. It's important that we don't bore the audiences. We give them a lot of different things, a lot of different themes, and they'll find something they love between all of them. But the thing is, this Batman just won't fit at all within the grand scheme of things. I mean, we're looking at an early age Batman with little to no experience in a world where superheroes and the idea of being just a hero in general is pretty much obsolete. Now, don't get me wrong, Gotham has always been a place where hardship and heroism is definitely kind of like on the back burner. I mean, Batman has been a hero for almost 100 years, and Gotham is still the worst city to live in the DC universe. But my point being is that this Batman within the current DCU timeline would just make no sense whatsoever. I mean, if you've been following shows like Creature Commandos, you would have seen that this Batman and his world of Gotham, things that happen would have definitely been solved or, critiqued or mentioned by now. I mean, if you just look at Matt Reeves' Batman, characters like Superman, Green Lantern, and other supernatural or super powerful beings just wouldn't make sense in the grand scheme of things in the universe that he's creating. But not even just heroes. Think about villains. I mean, they haven't announced who the Batman villain is going to be in the sequel as of right now, recording of this video. But just the idea of a classical Clayface or Mr. Freeze that we've all come to know and love just seems unrealistic. If anything, if we do see those characters, they'll be the more traditional versions of themselves rather than the, giant Clayface monster that can transform into anyone or the man in the cold suit walking around with a cold gun turning people into ice cubes. And if this Batman had already been introduced to have a world with other heroes or supernatural elements, then it may have worked, but there is no indication that superpower people or other vigilantes even exist. I mean, even in the Penguin show, you would think after the tragedy of what the Riddler did to Gotham, other heroes would show up to support the city, and the fans deserve to have both a grounded and larger than life version of Batman. I don't see why we can't have both at their peaks. I mean, have faith that your audiences can distinguish between two different Batman, especially since James Gunn plans to make a distinction between DC Elseworld stories and the DCU. But we can't stop there because another critique that I have is that by combining James Gunn's Batman alongside Matt Reeves' Batman, what that would do is really just handicap the stories and the potential of what both sides of the coin can offer. I mean, what makes Matt Reeves' Batman so good is just the idea of Batman starting from the bottom as a hero on his second year, working his way to the top and realizing all the mistakes and how corrupt Gotham really is and how he can contribute to making the place a better place. Whereas in DCU, we already know that this Batman is established. I mean, from what we've heard, they plan on introducing Damian Wayne in the new Batman movie, and Damian Wayne is the most current and last Robin, who is the actual biological son of Bruce Wayne, meaning by this point, we have already had the first Robin, Dick Grayson, alongside Jason Todd, and the list goes on. I mean, even Batgirl should be around at this time. So the idea that Robert Pattinson, a younger looking guy, playing a younger version of Batman, would now have four Robins under his wing at this point, a Batgirl and a Batwoman, and still be a young guy, doesn't really make sense. Especially after we've seen kind of Batman teased in the Creature Commandos. That silhouette of Batman doesn't really fit at all what we come to see in Matt Reeves' version of Batman. And speaking of shows like Creature Commandos and Peacemaker, we see that superpowered people and heroes have already been around since at least the Vietnam War. So that really wouldn't make sense if Patterson's Batman was from the same universe, because you would think these superpowered people would have been mentioned by now. And by bringing him into the DCU, this puts a lot of limitations on the writers and the stories they can tell. Now, the different writers for Batman will have to conform and make sure their versions of the stories honor each other without leaving room for plausibility. Since we know comic book fans, myself included, will overanalyze any glaring plot holes. Just like in comics, how even though Batman has his own main continuity, we still have amazing stories within their own timelines that are not limited and are treated as Elseworlds because they may or may not break continuity. And I think DCU has already introduced the idea of Elseworld stories without forcing it. And if Matt Reeves' Batman continues to be successful, we could potentially see other Elseworld stories like Red Sun, Kingdom Come, Dark Knights of Steel adaptations. The possibilities of what DC could do in these Elseworld stories could be endless. And by easing the fans into this early with the two different versions of Batman, it can make casuals even understand the more complex stories later on. Now, before we get to the last 2 points, the last one being the most important and the one I think is really going to convince you the most, if you made it this far into the video, go ahead and leave a like and comment and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and it really shows me the engagement and what you guys like to see for the channel. But let's get back to the next critique, which is that the DCU has already shown us that rushing things fails miserably. Now, the main issue with the previous DCU is that the worlds and characters didn't feel organic at all because everything was rushed and forced to fit together. By bringing Patterson to the DCU, this tells me and other comic book fans that rather than sticking to their guns, no pun intended, and original ideas and plans, this shows that they decided to take the easy route of using a Batman who was already an established movie, who is already currently popular and successful, and converting him over to the DCU that he does not mesh well with at all. In the end, fans are going to consume both outlets of both Matt Reeves' universe and the DC universe, but the worst thing you do is try to isolate fans of Matt Reeves' Batman by just forcing him to join over to the DCU and conform to the stories that they have there. It's going to isolate fans that are really into the Matt Reeves and Penguin universe versus the fans who want to see a fantastical side of Batman. Like I mentioned before, there's no reason we can't have both and they can both be successful and work well. There are many variations to the character of Batman, and by giving your audience multiple decisions of the character, the fans deserve to have a fluid world with a lot of promise and growth for the new DCU, rather than a rushed project trying to keep up with Marvel. I mean, Marvel is already introducing the ideas of multiple universes and variants, and the audience there is easily understanding this concept by making their own theories that boost anticipation for other films before they even release. So DC, they can capitalize off this in a similar way by just working with Elseworld stories. Now that you made it this far, it's time for me to give you my basic critique. And I've kind of already hinted towards it in this video, and that being that the age range and the career paths of both these Batman do not align whatsoever at all. I mean, even though we haven't gotten the DCU Batman, just from what we know, it's going to be a more comic book traditional version of Batman, which is going to be a lot different from Matt Reeves' version. Like, yes, they're the same hero, they have the same origin, use similar gadgets, but the life experiences and the things that they're going to face in these universes are going to be a lot different of an outcome into who they are as characters. And for what we know of the DCU Batman, he's already older version of Patterson and in the prime of his career. And we've had plenty of Batman movies for decades, yet we have never seen the entire Bat family actually depicted as they should be. Batman who has Damian Wayne as Robin, which means my favorite character, so there's a little bit of bias, Nightwing, and the rest of the Bat family do exist. And we can finally see Batman and his allies all in action in one universe. Also, in another universe, seeing a different Batman start from the bottom trying to solve crime in Gotham on his own. And for my comic book fans out there, the best way to describe it is kind of think of it like the Detective Comics version versus the self-titled version of Batman. We have two ongoing runs of Batman by different writers at all different times telling different stories. In Detective Comics, as you can guess, those are more the detective ground-based storylines, the psychological horrors and thrillers. And then you have the Batman, which is the more fantastical side, and typically where you see him team up with other heroes as well. And I think the same way it can work in comics, it can work on the big screen. So overall, will Robert Pattinson's Batman be in the DCU? There's a lot of evidence saying that he won't be, but there are a lot of fans who think he will be. If you're like me, you're probably hoping that he won't be in the DCU. To continue to keep Matt Reeves' thing as his own thing. And I think that's the best way to do it. But go ahead and comment down below. How do you feel about the new DCU as a whole so far? I mean, it just started. Are you excited about it? Are you anticipating it? Also, how do you feel about Matt Reeves' Batman and the idea that Robert Pattinson could become the Batman at DCU? Overall, either way, as long as we're getting good stories, I'll be satisfied.